Hey guys, this is Courtney from Willows Bloom, and today I am doing a love analysis reading for Taylor Swift. And I am offering this type of reading temporarily. Relationship analysis is not just love, but of course, love and relationships are very intertwined. But this is a temporary reading I'm offering for a limited quantity and a limited time. And this is kind of an example of that. This is not going to be a full reading like I would offer when somebody actually buys it, and I will also pull cards and go super deep into it, but this is kind of like the foundations of how I start an analysis on somebody. Okay, so this is Taylor Swift's chart in Placidus house system, if you're aware of the house systems. And I do want to kind of dive into her specifically, her childhood, and then we'll talk about the partners that she attracts, the kind of dynamics that might appear in her relationships, and even timing for the recent breakup she's had, as well as the potential for future relationships to evolve. So we're going to go ahead and start off looking at her rising sign being in Scorpio and Mars in Scorpio right on her rising sign or ascendant. So the rising sign or ascendant is the most outward facing part of our personality. That in the midheaven tends to be very obvious in terms of our reputation or how people perceive us. And there are, of course, core aspects to our personality and part of what drives us in life and part of what helps us make decisions. So for her, she's really going through a scorpionic Mars type of journey. And this makes a lot of sense when you listen to her lyrics and her music and when you see kind of what she's done in the industry. But she has really had an impact in terms of her career that is very much kind of paving a new way. She has, re-recorded her own songs to take her power back. She has fought for the rights to get paid for streaming services, and she's basically changed the whole entire way the music industry operates in terms of how it treats its artists with the producers and the labels. So she's really had this ability to fight and push back in her life and in her career. However, that also can translate into her relationships because Mars is a planet of war and conflict, and being on the ascendant, it's almost like she's moving through life as a little bit either defensive or argumentative. And this energy can be really effectively channeled into her obsession with her career. And Mars is very strong in the sign of Scorpio, and it really allows this energy to be a little bit obsessive compulsive, a little bit intense. Like, this is what I want and I can't think of anything else. That's how Scorpio is already. And then when it has the fire and the passion of Mars, it really heightens that energy and it makes her very kind of driven to succeed. And when somebody is also driven to succeed, sometimes they can be a little bit fixed in the way that they operate, and they can have this energy of maybe bulldozing anything that gets in its way. And so I think that Taylor Swift has this kind of energy of domination that comes in very, very strongly into her career and her personality. And I think it is really effectively channeled well in her career, especially going up against these larger corporations and these giants and these powerful entities and businesses that have maybe, tried to take advantage of people in the past. She is the perfect person to stand up to them and to use this energy in her chart against them. However, in an intimate relationship, if this energy is still kind of spilling out, if it's so strong that it's spilling out into your personal life and it can't just all be used up in your career and channeled that way, let's say it's in excess, which in her case, she actually has like the more positive sides of Mars because she is a night chart, but I'm not going to get super into that. But when you're born in the day, because Mars is very hot, it tends to be a little bit more problematic. So for her, she's getting a little bit more of the effective side of Mars and seeing how her anger can get her somewhere. But in relationships, this still might be a problem in terms of her maybe at times being argumentative, conflict-oriented, defensive, and especially being in the sign of Scorpio and having her moon in the 8th house and her Chiron in the 8th house, which is very much linked with Scorpio energy as well. she may have just a lot of trust issues in particular, and this more warrior like energy within her will come out in relationships and maybe be even cold and calculated in terms of how she treats people or reacts to people when she feels like her own safety and security within the relationship and intimacy and vulnerability is being threatened or taken advantage of. And that's something that we can see as a theme in her life in general. We can see how she's had people in, celebrities betray her, and her own producers betray her, and many things happen where, she put trust in somebody and they just took that trust and went around and kind of stabbed her in the back. And that's something that we really see with these 8th house Scorpio energies, is betrayal and trust being this huge kind of monolith in her life that she has to deal with. And so she's really ready to be hurt and ready to fight for herself and defend herself against being hurt. And so when I see this for somebody who's, entering into a relationship, it's really going to depend on the kind of person that they attract and how the other person can handle that energy. Because if this is, if that person doesn't react well to her way of defending herself, or even maybe her, at times Scorpio can be very aware of people's psychology. So they can even fight through like manipulation or psychological tactics, and through kind of gaining the upper hand and power over somebody using willpower, and using emotions and energy. So if somebody can't either meet her where she's at and not just bend to her, or if somebody can't understand where this is coming from and sympathize with her and kind of talk her down from that ledge, or help her see that they can be trusted, then this energy could ultimately break up a relationship. Mars has the power of really forging new ground and always wanting to kind of do things bigger and better, taking things to the next level. They can get bored if they don't have enough friction with life, because Mars is a friction planet, a chaotic kind of planet that wants full steam ahead, and it wants to push against something, even if that's its own internal battles. That's another story. But this is really evident with Taylor Swift in her career and her personal life. Like, you can see how she's just always trying to level up her game. She's always evolving in a very Scorpionic way. She's really having this death and rebirth every time she launches an album. She has completely new looks, completely different style of music. In some instances, she really is always looking for like the next bigger and better way to expand her business and her career. And this can also influence the way that she is in relationships. If that partnership isn't expanding with her, you can see how someone could easily get left behind. And Mars really has an energy of ending things. So you'll often see in relationships when Mars is strongly aspecting an angle or a relationship planet or something of that nature, you'll really see how they have either kind of sporadic relationships, like breakups will be more common. Maybe they'll have multiple marriages, or you can see something like where they're single for longer periods of time. I think in this case with her, we're kind of seeing that more sporadic type of relationship going on. And that's not always the case. I mean, she was dating her last boyfriend for 6 years, but before that it was more sporadic, and now maybe it'll be sporadic again, or she could have a long period of being single, kind of however she's handling that. But regardless, there's a lot to get into here. And just again, to emphasize, I'm not going to even cover all of it by any means. There's so much to cover. So if you guys want to drop in the comments down below what you see, because I'm sure I'm not going to get to it all. Another thing I'm seeing very strongly in her chart is Pluto conjunct Black Moon Lilith in the 12th house, squaring the nodes. So this for me, I mean, there are just so many signatures for me where she's really, really wanting to feel powerful. And I think that there may have been something that happened to her in a past life around this desire for power. Maybe others were more powerful than her and they put her down, or maybe she wielded power in a kind of shadowy way, especially with Black Moon Lilith there. But there's something carrying over from past lives when we say square to the South Node, where this wasn't resolved. This wasn't something that she felt like she accomplished or evolved past as a soul. It got cut short. And so in this lifetime, we see her again on this search for power. And definitely this stems back from something very, very ancient within her. And with having Pluto near Black Moon Lilith, there is kind of like a shadowy element to this. Both of these planets are quite dark. And this definitely is likely to come up in relationships because Black Moon Lilith is very concerned with our kind of darker desires of things that we might be ashamed of. It's very common in cheating. And with Pluto here, there might be ways in which she actually tries to kind of hide from her own darkness and her own desires that might not always be the most socially acceptable. And I think that's something that we've seen her explore in her album Midnights, which is really beautiful because it's brought out some of the shadowy elements of her psyche and come into more of a state of integration, which we see very commonly in people with strong Scorpio energy. They are much more able and likely to look at all aspects of the self and integrate it over time. So going on, there's so much to talk about. I'm like, I'm trying to make this video short because I have to run off to a Ren fair, which I'm excited about. But one of the things that I also look at when I'm looking at the person in relationships is their moon. What aspects the moon is making. And of course, Chiron as well is in the same sign as this moon. So she has her moon in Cancer in the 8th house, and Jupiter is there. So I would consider this a conjunction because the moon moves really quickly. So even though it's 6 degrees apart, this is definitely a conjunction to me. So having the moon with Jupiter is part of the reason why she's so famous, because the moon is the public and Jupiter is giving her the potential to reach a much wider audience. So her becoming really famous makes a lot of sense with this. Jupiter on the moon also makes her very optimistic. It can make her have this really strong desire to learn and have a lot of innate wisdom. And she can learn a lot from her mom, especially. I can see this closeness in relationship with her mom. Whenever the moon is in Cancer, there is usually some feeling of being very intricately woven into the concept of your mom or the relationship with your mom. And sometimes this looks like enmeshment. Or feeling emotionally responsible for things that your mom has gone through. It's almost like you can sometimes feel more guilt, responsibility, or like this deep, again, interwoven connection with her that is not as easy to separate from in adulthood. And that looks different for different people. But I think that, Taylor's very close with her mom, and seeing her go through her cancer diagnosis, I'm sure, has really impacted her. But what's interesting as well is that that Chiron is in Cancer, which is typically, Chiron is going to indicate where we have some kind of childhood wounding. And being in the sign of Cancer, this is somebody who has some kind of wound around not being emotionally accepted for who they are, not being nurtured in the way that they loved and needed, because Cancer is the energy of the family. And so there's usually something where you feel like the family unit was broken, or your place in the family was not honored, or your sensitive emotional side was not taken care of. And just like basic nurturing and kind of affection, those things don't necessarily feel like they were given all those needs were not fully met in the way that she needed them to be met. So even though she has her moon in Cancer with Jupiter, even though she might have this really beautiful relationship with her mother, even though she might have felt like she had a good childhood in many ways, I think still there was some element of the nurturing that was missing for her. And we can also really see this with the moon being opposite her Uranus. There is a level of distance here when the moon and Uranus come together. There might even be some kind of traumatic event in the childhood that made her feel like she was having something unstable happen, or maybe it was just kind of someone in her family was not super sensitive like she was. Maybe they were more logical. But there's some breakdown from the point of I am a little child and I need someone sensitive and loving and present. And something happened during her childhood to make her feel like that wasn't always what she got. Maybe there was a move that happened. Maybe there was a divorce. Maybe her mom was at times very loving, and at times she traveled a lot and wasn't there or was emotionally absent in some way. Or maybe her mom was loving and her dad was super intellectual and didn't understand her sensitivities. But someone with the moon in Cancer and 8th house is definitely operating with quite a bit of sensitivity, and a little bit maybe more triggers around, especially things around trust and betrayal, and being loved and accepted for who you are, all those things that I've mentioned. So there's some kind of breakdown that happened there in childhood. And of course, the reason I bring this up is because this is translating into her relationships. And we really see that once we start to look at how Venus, which is the planet of her 7th house ruler. So Venus, she has Taurus on the descendant, which is her relationship sector. And Venus is a planet in charge of Taurus. So Venus is her relationship planet. You can see both Venus and her moon are exactly at 1 degrees of Aquarius and Cancer. So they're making a quincunx to each other. So this idea of relationships and receiving affection and love and all those things, and our moon element, the mothering, the nurturing, those things are not really working together in her life. Planets and quincunx have nothing in common, and they are compartmentalized within the psyche. They are not operating in a way that sees and recognizes one another. They are not integrated and helping one another. And as a result, they basically it can be hard to feel like you can meet both of their needs at the same time. And what happens with this in particular is that with the moon being in Cancer, there is this really strong need to feel that kind of emotional connectivity and to feel like I'm being really nurtured, I'm being really loved, I'm being really supported. But at the same time, her Venus in Aquarius is a little bit more emotionally detached. This, for her, this is very clear to me that she has always felt like an outsider. With Venus being the social planet in the sign of Aquarius, of being the outsider, being rejected oftentimes, an outcast, different. You can very clearly see that she has always felt like she's been on the outside looking in, which I think really comes back to her desire for power and influence, which is strong with her Pluto and Mars and Scorpio energy and 8th house energies. She really wants to feel like, okay, if I'm on the outside and I feel like this chronically to some degree, if I feel different, then if I control the entire board game, it's like that's how I recoup my feeling of being safe almost. You know, it's like, well, if I'm not going to be included in the popular kids, then I'm going to make so much money and everything that I buy everything out and I own everything, and the popular kids have to acknowledge how great I am. You know what I mean? So there's something with that where I feel like she's fighting, having this internal battle a little bit here with herself and trying to regain that sense of security through power and self-esteem. Venus is our self-esteem. So with Venus in Aquarius, sometimes we can feel like that outsider energy is, I mean, if we are wanting to belong, then that outside energy can really feel like the self-esteem takes a hit. Otherwise, if you're okay with being an outsider, if you're okay with being different and you kind of lean into that, then your self-esteem can actually be heightened and you can attract more people who have that other kind of unique energy that you have, or that is, similar. So there is part of her that feels like an outsider in her relationships, that feels different and is attracted to things that are different. She's probably attracted to people that she's very intellectually stimulated by, people who are progressive, who have ideas and ideals that are suiting more equality within humanity. That's what Aquarius tends to be very concerned with, social systems and how, oppression occurs and kind of trying to overthrow that, rebel that, go against the norm. You can see this in her, in her writing, she's definitely like clearly supportive of, homosexuality and feminism and all these different topics that are more progressive in nature. And so we can really see that she's in this kind of intellectual energy with an Aquarius Venus. That doesn't always mean that you're fully in tune with how things feel emotionally. And actually, let me read. I'm writing this book right now, and I do want to read an excerpt of Venus and Aquarius in particular to kind of get a sense of what this will look like for her. Let me just run up to that. Okay. Venus and Aquarius needs are progressive ideals, open-mindedness, acceptance, consciousness, and logic. And her affirmation would be, I'm open to listening to my heart just as much as my head. So Venus and Aquarius individuals find themselves in unconventional relationships that give them the freedom to truly be themselves. They might attract unusual partners or have atypical commitment styles and sexual preferences. Aquarius is a progressive sign ruled by Uranus, a planet of unexpected change, surprise, and innovation. For this reason, they will always have their unique twists on relationships, aesthetics, or money. Since Aquarius is an air sign, they spend a good deal of time in the mental plane considering the mysteries of life and a more universal perspective on human nature. They're logical and bring a detached and research-minded approach to all relationships. This serves them well when they are able to uplevel the relationship by bringing more consciousness to the dynamic. In this way, their logical mind is used to analyze the relationship, break old patterns, and enlighten themselves and their partner. However, it can hurt them when they are being too aloof or emotionally detached. This occurs when they don't integrate their awareness with vulnerability, empathy, and intimacy. And this is a trouble with integrating the head and the heart. Okay, so I talk more about this. I'm not going to go read all of it because you can read the book when it comes out. But you can see here that there is a need to integrate the head and the heart. And, because Aquarius is so research-based, it's almost like Taylor entering into a relationship for her is a lot. It's gaining information and research on how relationships operate. And she, with having so much Scorpio energy, is very perceptive about people. And so I can see that she has almost like a study of people, and her entering into relationships is where she's continuing that research and study. And it can come from this like logical, cerebral place. But her moon, which is her deeper emotional needs and her emotional nature, is in Cancer, which is very intuitive, very feeling, very watery. And so it doesn't necessarily combine at all with this logical, research-oriented part of herself. And so it may feel like at times that she, as a partner, or the kind of partners she attracts, can either be emotionally very supportive for her, but may lack the kind of, progressiveness and the thing that satisfies her Aquarius energy, the thing that feels like it's giving her affection and nourishment and newness and excitement and stimulation in her brain. It's like those things she might feel like she kind of gets one or the other. She gets this really unique kind of relationship, but her emotional needs are not really being supported, or her emotional needs are supported, but she's not really getting this kind of progressive, exciting, growing relationship. And so these two parts of her feel like they may really have trouble being fully satisfied in one single partnership. And so usually there is a need to have some kind of adjustment with the quincunx. So maybe adjusting her expectations or finding ways to meet her own needs in certain ways and not put all that reliance on a partner, or maybe it's the way she's showing up in a partnership that needs adjustment. And I think that we can see this come in also very clearly with having a Taurus descendant and kind of given her last relationship. So when we understand the kind of person she's going to attract, we're going to see that this Taurus energy is a big staple of that, as well as Venus in Aquarius. So on one hand, with Venus in the second house, she's definitely going to attract people who are either have a lot of money or who are very focused on survival and stability. And that's also very common with Taurus energy. And so she might really seek out kind of people who give off this energy of being more grounded or chill, and not necessarily somebody with a lot of emotional depth or emotional volatility. There is a simplicity to Venus energy that she's really seeking out in her relationships. She wants someone simple and stable and more like hometown kind of vibes. But with her Venus in Aquarius, she also needs to feel like it's reaching towards it. The partnership is reaching towards maybe some of her higher ideals, and that this person cares about society. This person cares about kind of like how things evolve, and again, trying to bring more consciousness to the relationship. So while she desires simplicity, she also desires maybe intellectual stimulation, consciousness, again, progressiveness. So having that all wrapped up into a person is kind of like who she's likely to attract and who she's likely to find as her ideal partner. However, with this making a quincunx to her moon, with Venus quincunxing her moon, and with such strong Scorpio, Pluto, 8th house energy, she, even though she feels like she needs that in a partner and may attract that in a partner, she also desires a lot of emotional intensity and volatility and depth that this person inherently is not going to have. And so this is going to be the conundrum for her, and why this quincunx is taking place, because she's going to get into relationships with some of these more stable partners, like she did with Joe these last six years. And Joe was somebody very steady in her life, and he wasn't always looking for more. And that's her energy. She's always looking for more. So you can start to see how there can be a breakdown here. And in many ways, this is what is meant to be integrated into her life and help create balance for her, and the kind of antidote to her own energy. But it can be hard if you're not able to feel like that person has enough aliveness to it. You know, if it's too stable, if it's too mundane, her moon opposite Uranus is going to feel trapped. Her Mars on her ascendant is going to feel desiring for new ground, desiring for change. And it's going to leave her feeling like, I'm too settled down. And so she needs somebody who embodies maybe a little bit more of this Mars energy in their chart as well. So maybe they have some stability. Maybe they are focused on the things that she really wants as a soul. But they also, if they can also have a little bit more of a assertive, reaching type of energy, or a little bit more Scorpio energy, that's a little bit more depth, I think that would actually suit her really well to have a pairing of both. Because I think someone that goes too heavily into stable territory will really not make it long term for her. You know, if they can't meet her level of awareness in any capacity, and they're just more simple-minded, I just don't think that's going to go well for her, or for them, I should say. So this book is From the Moment We Meet. It's a really good book, talking about like synastry and things of that nature, but relationships in the chart. So for a Taurus descendant, it's talking about 3 different phases of relationships. And the descendant is always going to be parts of ourselves that we project onto others. She embodies more of the Scorpio energy, the ascendant. So whatever is opposite that on the relationship line, the descendant, is automatically going to be what we attract in others. And that's because we maybe lack it, or because we haven't integrated it and we're projecting it, or we're just witnessing it in other people because that's how we integrate it. So in the first stage, we have idealization, and these are qualities in others that we are attracted to. So she is initially going to be attracted to easygoing people who love comfort, pleasure, beauty, simplicity, who are resourceful, capable, and generous. And then in the second stage, it goes into denigration, where the shadows emerge as the projection weakens. So as you start to feel maybe how that you don't, if you haven't integrated that part of the self, you start to see the shadowy you start to look at the Taurus energy in a shadowy lens and not fully seeing its whole essence, I guess. And so the shadowy side would be her starting to see her partner as lazy, as dull, as stubborn, as someone who's unwilling to shift or to change, as somebody who's a couch potato, or who maybe is too materialistic, maybe too driven to have security in their life. Maybe they're possessive, or they love to just hold on to money or belongings a little bit too much. And her, with her moon opposite Uranus, I mean, yes, she has a stellium of planets in the second house. She is very driven by security, but her moon opposite Uranus really also thrives on a little bit of chaos and a little bit of change and a little bit of insecurity. So she has competing needs within her. And so this is also going to be a problem in the relationship, as she has competing needs here where she wants stability, but she also doesn't. And will maybe start to see them through the negative lens of they're just lazy, they just won't change, they're too driven by money. The last stage is when you have integrated the Taurus energy into, or when Taylor has integrated the Taurus energy into her life fully. And this shows you what you need to recognize in yourself in the relationship. So this for her is recognizing her need for self-esteem and personal worth, appreciating beauty, valuing stability and security, and feeling worthy of love. And there is definitely something there with these Scorpio placements, where 8th house placements, where you can be attracted to relationships that can make you feel like you're not worthy of love, or like it has to be painful or it has to be difficult in order to feel like you're alive, or in order to feel like it's right, because that is almost the emotional set point. And so in many cases for her, having this long 6-year relationship, I think, can really teach her, or really taught her, I think, how to accept love in its simple form and be happy and content with things not being so tumultuous or so up and down. And if they were up and down, then that's another story. So that is some of the major stuff that I see in terms of her needs in relationships, the kind of person that she will attract, how she's meant to evolve. And of course, there's so much more to talk about, but we're not going to get into everything because we don't have time for that. So I wanted to talk about sort of this kind of relationship timeline with Jo recently, and then talk about her future of her love life and, what's to come. And if you buy a reading from me, I'll go more into detail on everything, including the timeline, as well as pull some tarot cards on the Venus retrograde coming up. So if this reading is still available, then you know that is there for you. So apparently Taylor Swift announced the breakup with her and her 6-year-long relationship with Joe Alwyn on April 8th. To be frank with you, I was like, they did not break up on April 8th, because there is really no indication to me that there would be a breakup. And then I started looking online about maybe a timeline of the relationship and when that might have actually happened. And it was saying in February. And I went to look back, and then I was like, that makes sense. And we're going to talk about why first, and then we'll get into what was happening on the announcement day. So as we can see in February, like around February 8th of 2023, I do think that this was when the breakup happened. First of all, she had just gone through the experience of having, a few days before, of having her son on the North Node, which is really calling her to grow as an individual. And especially the sun on the North Node always wants to grow within our career. And being in the 3rd house, the way that she thinks about things can start to shift to help her progress more. But that's a minor transit. What really was happening here that caused the breakdown of this relationship is the fact that her Saturn was squaring Mars. As I've mentioned in the very beginning of this reading, Mars is the planet that can create that desire for more, and it is a planet of endings and conflict and wanting something kind of bigger or better. And so this Saturn, which is also a planet of endings, of wrapping up a chapter, is coming in here, making this tense aspect in their exact here. And you know that it's challenging their relationship, because it's really having her check in. Saturn is a very long-term planet, and it has this pressure that it puts on us, especially in a square or an opposition, where it's asking us, is this who you are? Is this how your life is always going to be? Is this what you want out of a relationship? Is this the most that you're capable of? Do you want to reach for more? Do you have more things that you want to do and differently? Do you need to be more assertive in life? Do you need to kind of go grab life by the, you know what? It can ask a lot of those questions. And when it's also when it's making this hard aspect to Mars, it can bring up a lot of conflict, and it can make it hard to resolve that conflict. If the relationship is not meant to be, it will start to break down at this point. And not only can it bring up conflict, but it can also bring up this feeling of having hurdles or emotional difficulty or delays in life that all just kind of add pressure and add pressure and add pressure. And because Mars is right on her ascendant, right on her line of personal self, it's always going to be also affecting her descendant. So Mars or Saturn is also squaring her descendant, her relationship line. So anything that affects her on such a grand scale is going to affect her closest relationships. And so this Saturn squaring these two angles and squaring this planet is really what ended the relationship here. And I think was bringing her towards a new horizon and making her see where she may have been compromising too much of this Mars energy in her life, where she may have felt like she needed more vitality, strength, assertiveness, and a desire for more in her career, possibly. But you can see how it would definitely be a cause of a breakup. Saturn is a very slow-moving planet. So if when you're together with someone for 6 years, I'm expecting an outer planet like Saturn to be the ones that are making an aspect like this to cause a breakup. Like you wouldn't just get this from a Venus or Mars or something transit. That's not significant enough. So another thing that was happening around this time is she was experiencing Jupiter making a square to Jupiter. And I've seen this also come up in a breakup before, where you really get to this place in your growth cycle that person can't move forward with you. And I think Jupiter squared Jupiter, Sun on the North Node, can really represent this change in energy where you're realizing that you've outgrown something and you can't sustain something anymore. And you want to be free. You want to expand. And if you've been put in a container that's too tight, too small, you'll really start to push up against those boundaries. And when Saturn squares Mars, it becomes so uncomfortable. You start to lash out. You start to see the other person more negatively as the thing restricting you. And you realize you want to be free. You realize you want to be independent, which is very Mars in nature. You want to do something on your own and achieve more of your potential. So I think that's what was happening around this period of time. She also had Uranus making an exact sextile to her Chiron. So I think there was something liberating in her, maybe emotionally, where she was feeling more. I think that this could honestly be a good thing. I think in many ways it could trigger her Mars because, this is, or her Chiron, because this is a sensitive area of the chart. But with this being a positive aspect, I think it also helps liberate her emotionally from maybe holding on to connections that gave her that sense of security, to find something that maybe was more nurturing and authentic. So not just stable, but very much meeting her emotional needs. And I think her kind of making this decision to get out of that level of comfort zone, in this case, was a good thing for her emotional growth. So when the breakup was announced was actually in April 8th. And during this period of time, she had Mars on her Jupiter. So you can see again, this kind of energy of courageousness. Like let's put ourselves back out there in the world so that we can grow. And Mars is like, you can do it. You can do anything you set your mind to. And it's really trying to get her to feel brave in opening up publicly about this, because again, Moon Jupiter for her is a very public domain, and Mars is like, okay, let's deal with the consequences of this. I can handle this right now. I'm feeling stronger right now because it's on Jupiter, and this is the time to announce this. Mars is also opposite her Mercury, so it's really kind of bringing that idea of communication coming to the surface. And with Mercury and Uranus together, there's something kind of sudden about that as well. That's a little bit shocking, a little bit jolting. During this period of time, she was also having Uranus squaring her nodes. So it's really a change of fate here. And in many ways, I think it's trying to get her to evolve by having this mix up of stagnant energy and really bringing everything out to light, and fully accepting this new kind of chapter of freedom and change in her life. And I really love that because Jupiter also trines her sun at this time, or sorry, her sun, is exactly trine with Jupiter. So there's really a feeling of growing and expanding, and not just, it doesn't seem negative. When this was announced, it really seems like I'm ready for this. I'm growing, I am changing, I'm stepping into this new chapter, and this is good for me. It really feels like a true acceptance of the situation. And that's why I was like, they did not break up at this time, because these energies are very positive. So for her, I was kind of looking at transits for when her love life might have some changes. So whenever I look at something like this, I'm going to look at transits to your descendant. So planets moving through the 7th house, or crossing over the descendant 25 degrees of Taurus is going to really impact her. Transits to her Venus, which is her relationship planet. And then of course, other aspects can indicate that, but those are going to be the most kind of obvious. I was also looking at progressions, and I'm not going to get super into this because you guys probably won't even know what I'm talking about. But basically, I was seeing that there is some positive energy in her love life around June 2nd of 2024 when she has Jupiter trining her Venus. This usually gives us a potential for love, but it could also manifest in greater confidence, feeling like we have better relationships, more socializing, more money, so better appearances. It can manifest in many ways. She also has good energy in December 27th of 2024 when the North Node will sextile her Venus. I think she'll probably meet some key people during this period of time. She might have some kind of key advancements in her artistic career expression as well. But she might do a cool collab. In April 17th of 2025, she's going to start the journey of Uranus passing over her her descendant, her 7th house line, and into the 7th house. She's definitely going to have some kind of shakeup to her relationships at this time, or it could affect her more personally. But she might be more attracted to unusual kinds of people. She might find herself in tumultuous or kind of chaotic or unexpected, surprising relationships. She might have, if she's already in a relationship, she might have a breakup. She might have, there's just an energy of kind of like sporadic change, and things not feeling fully settled. And there's usually a need for a lot of freedom. So if she is in a relationship, that relationship needs to be different and allow a lot of freedom. With her Venus in Aquarius, this has a Uranus energy to it. So maybe this could bring her a partnership as well when that happens. And then then on July, she's having Jupiter return and Saturn sextile her Venus. And this could be really good for relationships as well. But the last thing I'll mention is that in February 2024, she's having the progressed moon trine Venus. During this period of time, she has some positive aspects with Jupiter and even Saturn. And so I am very curious about this particular month, like February of 2024. If she has something happen, I think something major in her life will be happening around this time. It could impact her relationships. Again, that doesn't always have to be the case. So anytime you look at a transit, that planet can signify multiple things. But this is seeming very significant to me. And if it affects her relationships, it seems like something significant will happen. Because with Jupiter, with positive Jupiter aspects, it's very growth oriented, it's very uplifting. And with positive Saturn aspects, it's also very committed and tangible and real and something that will last some period of time. So for the fact to have something like this happen is basically just trying to say that there is going to be a new significant chapter unfolding for her. And this could very much be in her relationships. And this is kind of where I'd start pulling cards and seeing what that's about. If you're interested, I'm really, really quickly trying to breeze through this because I really wanted this video to be 30 minutes, but I went way over. But that's generally how I would do a relationship analysis. Dive deep into the chart, look more at the transits, pull cards around it to kind of clarify what that exactly could be when there's, a few different interpretations of it. And then I would pull cards on advice for the Venus retrograde and things of that nature. So if that interests you, definitely check out that offering down below, and let me know what you think about this reading of Taylor Swift. If you want to add in your own context into the comments, of course I had to kind of hurry up because I am running late, and that's why I went so fast. So hopefully this makes sense to you guys and is helpful. And of course, I also offer synastry readings where I look at two people's charts together. So if you're interested in that, that is a longer reading because I look at each individual's and then the synastry together. So if you want something like that, I will also link that down below. Or actually, you can just contact me at willisbloom.com, contact@willisbloom.com for something like that. Because I don't think I have it specifically on my website, but you can also just buy a coaching session and we would do it there. So thank you guys so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.